Welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing in real estate so you never, ever have to work a job again. Today, I'm super pumped to bring on a student of mine who is actually just crushing it. 2022 has been fantastic, or he's been doing such a fantastic job in this market, as everybody's been saying, well, should I buy or should I wait? No, he's just buying and buying and buying and doing a phenomenal job making passive income from every property. I have Kenny Koblenz on the show with me. Kenny, thank you so much for being here with me.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. So it's just a privilege to be on here with you, Dustin.
This is exciting because I've been watching everything that you've been doing. You post inside of our group things that you've been doing, like, hey, I'm closing on this property, or this is happening and that's happening. It's just been really, really exciting seeing all this come to fruition. But before we get into like the nuts and bolts, because we definitely want to talk about the types of properties and all that sort of stuff, but what got you really started to invest and have the desire to invest in real estate?
Okay. Yeah. So I had a little bit of extra money lying around and I was looking for something to invest. And so I wanted something tangible, something that I can, have, own, possess, and different things like that. And I was reflecting back, and it's all started back in June of 21. Met with some guy friends down in South Carolina, and they, told me, hey, all you need to do is listen to BRRRR. I was like, never heard of them before and stuff like that. And so then I listened a little bit, but I still remember I was on my lawnmower in my backyard and stumbled upon your podcast. And I was like, dude, this is everything that is in my mind. And you're putting it out in fruition, or you're putting a business plan to it. And so I literally just, as I mowed the backyard, every time I popped your podcast on and literally started kind of from ground one. And I pretty much listened to every single podcast, kind of educating myself. And, my wife, obviously wasn't on board. And so I knew that I had to gradually, encourage her in the direction that I'm going. And so I was like, I really like this guy. I like his attitude and just his approach to everything. It's not a get rich quick scheme, but so that was really just kind of the, it clicked with me. It made sense in how you're approaching business. I'll back up a little bit. Back in 2017, we bought a property that was kind of out of our budget, but the only reason I purchased it was because I seen this little 30 by 120 shop that was detached to it. And I was like, we can make money from that. And so back in 17, we were working with some students in the area, and one of the students just was in a bad situation and needed to move out. And so we basically remodeled a section and had her move in, a month after we purchased the property. But then after hearing your story and kind of your business plan, made everything official. So that was, that all started back in June in 21. And by August, I had set up my LLC after listening to all your podcasts and signed up for the coaching and the classes and was kind of on my way. So, yeah, so that's kind of the basis, the beginning of my story. So.
I love it, man. And it's actually fun too, because I've had lots of students that come into either the membership or do the one-on-one coaching, and they come from the podcast and they listen to it. And the reason why I started it was to just share with people that regular everyday people like you and me can invest in real estate. Like there is nothing like crazy about it. We can do it. And so I'm really, really glad that, it's really helped you. But then at the same time, you have taking action. That's a big thing. A lot of people, they get stuck in analysis paralysis. They start hemming and hawing and like, oh, what about the market? If it does this, that, or the other. But what it really comes down to is we're investors. We make money if the market goes up, down, or sideways. So I am so excited to see all that you've been doing. Now, walk through just an overview of your inventory, because we talk about building the business first. What is your inventory? What do you have as your portfolio?
Okay. So that barn that I told you about before. So I incorporated, we remodeled, did some additional remodeling to that back in 2020. And so we have 2 rental units in that building right now. So we have a short-term rental, an Airbnb that's been doing really well. And then a long-term tenant who's been in there for a year and a half now. So those are the first two that I kind of brought into my LLC. And then starting in January, I purchased my first house. So still remember it. It kind of actually this is a fascinating story as well, because I never heard of wholesalers until your show. And so I was like, dude, I want to find out what a wholesaler is. And so I did some investigation and found some contacts, and just, wasn't ready to buy yet, but wanted to just kind of start, like you said, start that ball rolling, because I never know when I'm going to be ready to, to pull the trigger. And the first property that I got was a property that I was like, I knew the area, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I was like, I talked to my wife, and by this time I had kind of, gradually encouraged her, and she was kind of on board. She was like, okay, yeah, I think, if you go ahead with this, if you, go slowly, I think, she's on board. And so I reached out to the guy and said, hey, I am interested. And at that time he said, I'm sorry, some other wholesaler got it, because they were outbid or something like that. So I was like, okay, no problem. Not meant to be. And then this house just kept coming back to my mind. And probably like 2 or 3 weeks later, I text the guy and I was like, hey, just gonna throw this out there. Is this house still available? He was like, it won't hurt to ask. I'll go ask. And ended up, everything had fallen through and the property was still available. And so I purchased my first property for $35,000. And so it was kind of I think my first one was kind of the biggest home run that I had. So then from there, I have just been kind of continuing to, watch properties, and had a package of 5 that, looking back, I wish I would have probably bought, but I wasn't ready yet. And, it was a little bit out of my budget. But then in October, I had found a couple properties. And so really started to, hey, I was ready to purchase some more. So I was putting offers in, not thinking that many are going to stick, because I love your mindset, make sure that you buy equity, you make money when you buy the houses. And so I'm a stickler for that. I never pay full price for things. And my wife kind of gets on me about that as well. It's like, don't negotiate. If you won't get it if you don't ask. So
absolutely.
So I went in, making a couple offers, definitely got blown off by several, but then, a couple stuck. And before I knew it, I was in a contract for 3. And so through the process of the inspections and all of that, one of them got weeded out. It was kind of a lot worse than what I thought it was. But then I was able to close on the other 2. But then prior to that, it was basically in the same week. There was one other building that I saw that kind of interested me. It was a quadplex. It was in a good location. And I'm not sure why it was so cheap. And I talked to my realtor and I was like, hey, I'd like to make an offer on that as well. And so it was listed for 120, I believe. And I ended up offering 115, so 5 under. And it was in the middle of this, market, hype and different things like that. She said that evening there was 4 other offers made on the property. So I was assuming I'm probably not going to get it. And the next morning they said they accepted mine. And so that was really kind of cool. So I wasn't quite sure. I was a little bit scared because, I was like, Dustin, what am I doing? I remember, I think emailing you just to, make sure I'm not, in over my head. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I have the 2 at my property, and then the single family in January, and then the quadplex, and then the 2 single families that I just closed on here in the last month and a half.
That's phenomenal. And I get a lot of people asking me, well, how do you buy it for lower than the market value? And like in today's market, this is 2022 that we're actually recording this in December. And so people are asking, like, how do you actually do that? People are paying way over price or the asking price. And I'm like, well, we're investors. We don't we just keep putting in offers. Somebody's eventually going to take our offer. And if they don't, we'll just keep waiting. We're patient, but we don't overpay. And that's something I've seen you do, which is great. And then really getting two properties at the same time, that's just terrific. And people are asking me, how do you even get one, let alone two at the same time? It's because we're putting in lots and lots of offers. Now, when you started doing the coaching, what would you say has really helped you to make sure that you're doing it right, that you're not going to be losing money, that you're going to be eventually be able to become successful and employed with your business?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I went from not knowing much of anything to just, learning everything from your show and from the podcast. And, but ultimately, the green light deal, running the numbers, if the numbers work, it goes, you don't want to, connect your emotions as much. If the numbers work, it works. And so that's what I really had to go back to, even in my questioning and in my doubting, hey, if the numbers work, the numbers work. And so trust the numbers. And I really like what Charles had mentioned in one of the, I think the internal emails that he sent out to you. And that was kind of the same thing that I've been going by. When you run your numbers, I always run them high because I'd rather be high than low. And so, if interest rates are at 6%, do it at 8%, run them at 8%, just to give you an extra buffer. Because if it's going to work at 8%, it's going to work at 6%. And there's some flux for increase as well. And so different things like that I've been doing. And like you said, I ask myself the same question, is now the right time? Is now the right time? Because I still, think it's going to fall, but I'm not going to wait for that because, and what I'm realizing is there's more deals out there than you ever thought. You just have to go and find them. And, the other thing is, finding the good locations. I think it goes back to your starting point is, make sure that you find a good property manager in a good location. Because, that's something that I've also been struggling with a little bit as well and kind of having to backtrack. But I'm realizing through my mistakes more and more the validity of that, the importance of that is, you can find good properties in good areas, but if you don't have a good property manager, somebody that you can trust, it's not going to be a good area. And so I would just encourage you in that. So start with your property manager, start with, finding areas that have good, rent ratios to purchase prices and stuff like that. And then just, stick to it. So I know early on, I was a little frustrated because, I was trying to balance a full-time job with, all of this, and I wasn't going nearly as fast as I wanted to. But just take your time, work at your own pace, but be consistent and stay consistent. And things will start to fall into place. So,
yeah, the process of actually just making sure that a property is going to make you money and passive income. It's going to be a good property. You're going to, meaning the numbers are going to work well. That's very simple. In fact, I have the Green Light Deal Analyzer that you mentioned. Literally, it walks you through. Like you just put in a couple numbers and it pops out the information, like the ratios that you need. Do you have enough passive income? Are you capturing equity? It even helps you to negotiate. It gives you like an idea of where you might want to start negotiating. And so that process is actually very simple. But what you said, which was actually much harder, especially if you have a full-time job and you have a family and you're really, you have to build another business. That's the hard part, is building the business, making sure we're finding the right people in the business, finding the right property managers, finding literally everybody to make sure that the business runs on its own without us. Now, what were some hurdles that you had to jump over, or some maybe lessons learned as you've started building your business and now looking back and say, man, this is what I have now. I'm acquiring these quadplex, I'm getting these single family homes. Or in the past, would you say that was a big leap in your brain of like, I jumped over this hurdle or this lesson learned?
Yeah. Like I told you, I think at the beginning of the show or before we got online, this is a learning process through and through. And so I'm learning every single day as I'm going. But some of the hurdles that, I've had to walk through is, I had a property manager, really kind of frustrated with him, stopped communicating well and am not getting payments on schedule the way that, I should be. And so, I'm in the process of, going back to, my other contacts and revisiting that. And so that's been one of the major hurdles. The two properties that I have been managing myself, those are going well. And then also, starting to implement, working with Avail and kind of simplifying those processes. So that's been really nice just to, begin to simplify and understand the business concept a little bit more instead of doing a lot of hands-on, stuff. So, but one of the other big hurdles for me is, so the next phase in my education is financing. So, the first portion of my financing has been through, I was able to get a decent sized HELOC on my home. And so that's what I've been using to cash off and to, negotiate deals with some of these properties. And so that's been working really well. And especially with the way that interest rates are continuing to go up, I have the flexibility to still come in with a cash offer with the high interest rates and different things like that. And so I think that's honestly why I was able to get the quadplex, is because I had a cash offer, which I was able to use with my HELOC. So, but another hurdle that I had was, the furnace went out. And so, I actually just this morning, I had a furnace go out. And so, I'm in the midst of doing, property managing, changing and stuff like that. And so I had to manage that myself a little bit. So the first thing, I'm learning is, make sure that you get a couple different quotes, because I had another furnace that had gone out with my property manager. He came back, he was like, hey, it's going to be $2,700. $3,200. And so I was like, that's a little high for me. Let me in my contract, I have, if it's over $1,000, I'll need 3 different quotes. And he didn't give me 3 quotes. And so I was like, hey, you get 1 quote and I'll get another quote. And that makes 3 quotes. And so I was able to get one for 25. And then he came back with one for 27. And so, I saved, $500, $600 that way. And so, all those little things make a big difference in the long run. And so make sure that, you also stay on top of your property manager until you really establish that trust with him and they understand kind of your business philosophy and how you run things. So I would just say, hopefully you can find one that you don't have to stay on top of all the time. But especially early on, make sure that they're working for you, and make sure that you clearly identify what you're looking for, and the limits and the regulations that you set in place. Anything above 500, I want 2 quotes. Anything over $200, he needs to consult with me unless it's an emergency, something like that, just to kind of keep them in check as well.
I think that's a great ideas. And for me, I always watch over my property managers, and sometimes I kind of take my eye off the ball. In fact, I think it was like a couple months ago, I even released a podcast episode where I was talking about, man, I took my eye off the ball and some things just came up, expenses, things happen. I was like, oh my goodness. Or, a tenant's staying there 2 months longer than they should have. We should evict them. Things like that. When you take your eye off the ball of managing your manager, then bad things start to happen. So you always need to be watching, but nobody's going to care about your money more than you. And so you need to watch out for that. And I love getting multiple quotes too, because not just the price is good. You want to get that down, but you also have different eyeballs looking at the problem. And because I've had this countless times. In fact, in Ohio, it's notorious. If you have a furnace that's older than let's say 25, 30 years old, every single new company will come in and say, oh, it's not working, replace it. That's the first thing they'll say is replace it. Well, if you find somebody that actually knows how to repair these, you'll actually find somebody that's going to be worth their weight in gold, because I have one, his name's Bill. I have one furnace guy, and he's an old guy. I think he's like 65, 70 years old, and he's still trekking around and still fixing furnaces. But every single time, almost, I would say, literally every single time, some new company comes in and says, hey, replace the furnace. I call up Bill. Hey, Bill. And well, it's usually my property manager calling up other people, but now I always tell them, call Bill first and do that. But because I built my team. I built my business up first. I found Bill, and Bill, every time he'll go in there, oh, you don't need to replace it. It's just, this $20 part and a little cleaning and we're good. And it's like, $50 for the call. I'm like, done. That's awesome. And so you have more, because when you build the business, you have the right people running the business, but you still need to watch out for them. You still need to make sure that you're managing them well. So in financing, what are you doing now to move forward? I mean, there's lots of different ways to get financing for properties. Using a HELOC is fantastic. In fact, if you can buy a house with cash, that is the best way. In fact, all real estate investors would love to get there. We should get to where we're buying a house with cash. It doesn't have to be our own personal cash that we saved money. It could have been a home equity line of credit, private money, hard money, or some other way, but you use cash to buy the property, you get it much faster. Now, using up the HELOC, you need to, eventually refinance, pay off your HELOC and all that sort of stuff. But what are you doing now to continually scale the business with more properties and financing?
Yeah. So I actually am meeting with a couple different local banks because I have a friend in commercial banking. And so I want to pick his brain a little bit about, he was telling me about a product about commercial loan that will also be tied to a commercial line of credit so that, I can, I'm really new at that. So I have not a whole lot of information on that, but setting up a meeting with him to just, kind of figure out what that looks like. And then I'd also like to start doing some private money as well. I've already been, throwing the word out, like you said, I love, I'm an investor and then I do everything else on the side. But as you say, as you have those conversations, I've had a number of different conversations with individuals who, I've discussed that I invest in real estate, and they're like, oh, what do you do? And so we get in conversation, and before I know it, I learned something from the conversation. And just the other day, I had a conversation like that where this gentleman's been investing for 6 years. Same area, and had a property manager and said, hey, I just changed property managers, and I was like, oh, your old one doesn't happen to be this guy, and he was like, actually, matter of fact, it is. So just kind of different conversations, you begin to discover that there's more people out there that are doing something similar to you that you can learn from, that you can pick each other's brains. And so I'd love to, so in doing that, I, threw the word out and had a couple individuals already come to me and say, hey, I'd love to invest. I'm not necessarily into doing it myself, but I'd be willing to give you money. So that's kind of my next phase as well. A couple different options that I'm looking into, but I think now with 9 properties, I can present a portfolio and kind of give them the numbers, give them before and after, because I did some, completely remodel on the first home, and then in the process of remodeling the last 3 that I just purchased. So, yeah.
I think it's great. And you're finding great ways to finance your property. So instead of actually having your home equity line of credit, using your savings, whatever it might be, like that you have it at first hand. But there are other ways, like having a business line of credit, having private money lenders, hard money lenders. So you're coming to RUBCon, right? Yeah. In May. Yeah. Awesome. I have a good friend of mine. His name's Felipe. He loves helping people get business lines of credit, commercial lines of credit, business lines of credit. And so he's going to be there teaching on how to get even more business lines of credit, just unsecured business line of credit. So I literally went to my, what is it called? The local credit union, just went to a credit union. I said, hey, I have my business. I would like to get a line of credit. They said, okay, well, you can get a secured one, which means, it's attached to a property, attached to, some sort of collateral, or you can get an unsecured line of credit. It's a higher interest rate, but we can give you $50,000 as an unsecured line of credit for your business. I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. I mean, that's going to help me get many properties. I literally have like 5 businesses, so I can get literally 5 different business lines of credit. But at the same time, I can go to business after business. I know of one person. He literally just had one business, but he went to bank after bank after bank to find more business lines of credit, and he just got like 10 business lines of credit of $50,000. He has $500,000 he can use.
Wow.
So many different ways that we can actually invest. Now, what are your goals? Like, what would you eventually like to see? What's the purpose of you investing in real estate?
Yeah. So, I mean, the number one purpose is, successfully unemployed, is to be able to provide for my family. But then, as a family, we love traveling. My wife also has a bunch of health issues. And so I'd love to get her, more medical attention, that she needs. And so that's a big drive as well, to really keep increasing the business. I also work for a couple nonprofits. And so we believe in giving back. And so that's kind of another goal of ours is, as we scale this business to be able to give back more and more, stuff like that. So does that kind of answer your question?
It sure does, especially being successfully unemployed. That was my number one goal, is making enough money in passive income. Now, you said it was your wife that has illnesses?
Yeah. So we had long story short, we had our first child at 25. We went into labor at 25 weeks, and she was born at 27 weeks. And so she was born 2 pounds, 7 ounces, and has just really been a miracle. She just turned 10 and is playing
Praise the Lord.
And just highly energetic young lady, beautiful young lady. So, but then because of that, we discovered a lot of medical issues in my wife. She had some massive blood clots in her legs, and that she's dealing with for the rest of her life. And then some back issues and stuff like that. So, love to get, just some extra medical attention for her. And then, we've adopted a boy, and he's 4. And so we are continuing to, and we're also looking to possibly do some fostering as well. So, being successfully unemployed will really help us to be able to free our time to be able to invest in some, more people ultimately.
That's great. After the call, I'll get her name so I can be praying for her and praying for you guys.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. So next steps for you, is it to continually build in the same city? Or, because I know people always ask, where should we invest? And you're in Ohio. Are you looking to continue in that area? Are you looking to branch out to other states? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So my initial goal, just goals from number perspective was, about 10 in one area, and then, move to another area just to diversify, because I'm all about diversification and stuff like that. So that is kind of the next step as well, is I want to, begin to, we lived in South Carolina for a while. So I have a heart for the South. I love the South, Southern hospitality. And so I'm probably, just from a personal perspective, wanting to start looking down South somewhere to try to get another location. So I that would be one of the next steps in the scaling. And then, with the financing, figuring out financing, growing in that is another step. And then also, having to kind of figure out the property management, get that all figured out as well. So, yeah.
That's great. And I know a lot of people ask me the question, like, when should we find a new city? I personally don't like having all my eggs in one basket. I like having lots of baskets, so that in case something happened to one property manager, I'm not having to worry about feeding my family. And so that's smart. And moving on to another area would be great. But at the same time, you also have short-term properties as well. And that's why I want to quickly talk to you about that, because I love buy and hold. So it's not just long-term rentals. Like, I love long-term rentals, don't get me wrong, but I love midterm as well. I love short-term. I love multifamily, where we're buying and holding these properties for a very, very long time. In fact, want to give my kids, like, generational wealth. So talk to me about your short-term rental property that you have.
Yeah. So the short-term rental property, we had a friend from Ireland stay with us. And so we ultimately had remodeled it for her. And because of visas, she'd go back and have to renew. And then, she got stuck in Ireland for, a year and a half through COVID. And so we were like, hey, let's Airbnb it. And so that's when we started. And it's been a big hit. It's, 2 to 3 times the amount of what long-term rent we can get out of it. And now what I'm doing is I'm looking to, create a website for it. And our occupancy is about 50%. And so now my goal is I want to try to get that occupancy up to about 80 to 95% occupancy and grow it that way. But that's been a huge success. We have, nothing but 5-star ratings. And so it's been a lot of fun. I would say just some tips that I would give for short term: find something that's of minimal value, that surprises your guests, that you don't list online, different things like that. Something simple just to make it more personal. That's something that we've done and we've had great success with. A lot of people, mention it in their reviews and different things like that. But it's just when people are looking for, Airbnb or a place to stay away from, large hotels, they want, something personal. They want something a little bit unique and different. And so I think finding something like that is a great marketing, expense that you can write off. And so we've had great success with that. So, but yeah.
What example? Could you give a quick example of what that would look like?
So like we're in Amish country. And so, we do baked goods.
Do you have a butter churn?
Actually, that's a great idea. I should, my
wife would want to stay there. She would love to, she loves everything about Amish. And so she was like, well, we could go move over there. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we get some local baked goods and just say, hey, here's some local treats for you guys. Hope you enjoy. And try to put a Post-it note or something like that on it. And so, yeah, just kind of make them feel at home. And
that's very thoughtful.
That's been another, the other big thing that, I never really realized, but we get a lot of compliments of is we have a man drawer.
A man drawer. Okay. I can imagine what that is. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay. So it's basically a drawer with a whole bunch of knickknacks. And so like, a couple spare batteries, some pens, just knickknacks of, something, people might need when they're gone. And so it's been funny just how many, comments we've gotten about that. So
that's fun. Yeah. Man drawer. I like the name of that. Like when we moved, so my wife and I, we moved from California into Arizona. We moved into one of our rentals. It's a really, relatively small house, 1,215 square feet. And so we're eventually going to buy something a little bigger when the market does change a little bit more. But anyways, we have limited kitchen space and drawers. And my wife's filling him up with a bunch of stuff. And I said, babe, and I got to start calling it a man drawer, but I would call it a utility drawer. It's a utility, just to throw pens and batteries and matches or like lighters or what, just things that you would need, household that you wouldn't normally imagine. She was fighting me tooth and nail to put that in there. Eventually I won out, and it's the most used drawer ever because everything is inside of there. So that's a great idea.
It's the collect all. So
absolutely. Yep. Man, Kenny, this has been great. Now, hopefully everybody, so you listening to this show, you need to realize that Kenny and I are just regular people. I would say normal, but people get a little like, what's normal? But anyways, we're regular, everyday people, like just your next door neighbor that has figured out how to do this and started doing it. And so you can do that, right, Kenny? I mean, is there any parting thoughts that you would like to give to everybody in helping them to realize that they can do it too?
I would say, just, learn as much as you can and take that first step. That first step is the hardest. But take that first step. I never imagined that I'm where I'm at today, only about a year later, after starting in. But I would also say, I love what Dustin says, live frugally. It's live today, save up as much as you can so that you can do this investing and make wise decisions. And then, in the end, it's going to pay for itself. So, but.
I love it. Thanks, man. Kenny, it's been great having you. Hopefully people have got to realize that, man, you can do that. Everybody can do that. But Kenny, it's been great also having you be a part of the coaching and be a part of the community too. I love how you're just encouraging people and literally telling people, man, I got 2 properties at the same time. It's like this. People are realizing, like in the membership, they're like, because we're all in Slack and we're all talking together for everybody that's listening. So we're all talking together, and Kenny, you pop on, hey, I just got 2 properties. Like, what? This is awesome. So
if I can do it, anybody can do it. And so, I appreciate just all that you do, Dustin, and just your heart behind, just wanting to help a million people. I'm hoping that I can come on board and just help you achieve that goal. And so, so.
Awesome, buddy. Hey, man, it's been great having you on. Thank you very much, Kenny. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Dustin. Yep.